The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
This is News Talk.
Hello there, great show lined up for you on this Monday evening. Joe Molloy with you. It's fair to say the Allianz Football League got off to a lively start, not least in Croke Park Saturday night, so we're going to talk to Billy Joe Padden this hour. Meanwhile, we are 5 days out from the 2022 Six Nations. Andy Dunn in studio, Rory O'Connor in studio. On the football show, meanwhile, after 9, Pat Nevin as Frank Lampard takes the helm at Goodison Park. And Miguel Delaney will wrap up transfer deadline day for us with any breaking news before 10. 53106 is the text number. We are at Off the Ball on Twitter. Richie McCormack, evening.
Hey, Joe.
And Eoin Sheahan, hello.
Evening, Joe. Evening, Richie.
Very nice to have you on the Newsround, Eoin. You are a good man, I notice, from my viewing of OTB AM every morning, 7:30. A good man to get to events, to get to sporting occasions. So let's have it. Give us your weekend.
The weekend was pretty straightforward. Armagh coming to Croke Park on our doorstep here. You couldn't not go to see that one.
It'd be a sin not to go.
It would have been a sin, absolutely. A beautiful evening, a beautiful footballing team that are Armagh, and the storyline around the Dubs, which is just getting more and more fascinating. Had to go and check them out in the flesh. And then, of course, Joe, your beloved Kildare, I had to go and see what they were all about in the post-Jack O'Connor era. It was just a coincidence that they were playing Kerry yesterday. And St. Conleth's Park, not such a crisp afternoon, it's fair to say, but a proper league afternoon where you come home pretty smug with yourself that you got out of the house and went to the game.
Well, there's great excitement in Kildare for obvious reasons. I mean, it's the most box office, if you're of a certain vintage, the most box office management panel you could imagine in Glenn Ryan, Dermot Earley, Johnny Doyle, Anthony Rainbow, and then just a sprinkling of Paul Galvin on top. And the locals were excited. Throw-in was delayed.
It was. It went back by about 15 minutes. Huge queues all the way out Conleth's Park towards the pubs on the main street of Newbridge, really, which is quite the amount of people for people who know the town there. Like, I think half of that is down to the fact that St. Conleth's Park is not in an amazing state to hold big crowds at the moment, and hopefully that redevelopment happens for them soon, because they've got a hell of a team at the moment that they can get behind, and the early signs, especially in that second half, are hugely encouraging. I mean, we heard last week from James O'Donoghue on the football pod what Paul Galvin can bring as a coach. I think what he's going to bring in, and as you mentioned, that the sprinkling of Kildare legends there is enough for this Kildare fan base to be very, very excited about what's going to happen. And to be honest with you, that's not entirely removed from what we saw on Saturday night as well.
So I think with Billy Joe we'll talk a lot about the Dubs and Armagh. On Kerry we're all very interested as well. Where are they for you? Because McGrath Cup, they beat the opposition by a combined 55 points across their 3 games, I think it was. And there was a sense, obviously, Jack O'Connor is going to bring something to the party. I heard the second half display in particular. I was in here in studio, so I got to see highlights without seeing the full game. And the highlights don't really work in GAA in particular because they just show the points. So, I mean, everyone looks good all the time. They don't show the more turgid passages of play. So, Kerry in the second half, I heard in particular, were average.
Yeah, I think average is putting it kindly, to be honest with you. I think the results of Cork and Tipperary at the weekend show where the McGrath Cup is at the moment. Munster football, outside of Kerry and possibly Clare at the moment, is in a pretty bad place. So I wouldn't be reading too much into that. First half, they looked great. Second half, they were bad. And one of the moments that weren't shown in the highlights, because I did catch that back this afternoon, was this situation with 65 minutes on the clock. There will be 5 minutes of added time, so 10 minutes to go. Kerry are up by 2 points, and they get to the halfway line and they stop and they go into sort of Dublin mode. The lateral hand passing backwards over, and this goes on for, I would say, well over 60 seconds at this point. People inside, the forwards inside, Clifford's still on the pitch at this point, Gainey's still on the pitch, no one necessarily showing for the ball inside. It's almost as if they were prepared to do this once they got into a 2-point lead as opposed to going for the kill. They get turned over in the middle of the park, Kildare score, and then, as we all know, they got one last opportunity with Jimmy Hylands to get the equaliser. That was the most disappointing part about the Kerry performance. Yes, there is a better defence that we're seeing now under Paddy Talley, a swarm defence, a Tig Morley sweeper, which seems to be working pretty well. But the other side of that coin, if we're going to overreact to yesterday, is that in attack they seem to have put a little bit of a straitjacket on.
Okay. And I saw it's mentioned on the RT highlights, the Kerry half forward line all under 5'10". I like on a tight, heavy pitch, St. Conleth's Park, that's not going to suit men of that stature overly. Is that going to be the case come championship time?
the big question about that is where Sean O'Shea will start. So there's every chance Sean O'Shea goes into the half-forward line once you have Diarmuid O'Connor and Jack Barry back. They're going to return this weekend. David Moran is injured. He won't be back till March at the very earliest. Kerry need to start preparing for life after David Moran anyway. So I think the Sean O'Shea experiment is a longer-term view. Played very well throughout the rest of January. Connells Park is such a small pitch, and with such a big breeze, he kind of got bypassed as the game went by. So I still think that the Sean O'Shea midfield thing is worth trying out. But again, if we're going to get into the overreaction mode, he didn't play well as a midfielder yesterday, so you automatically think he'll go back into the 45. So that brings the average height up a little bit. I'm not sure what height he is, but he's over the 6 foot, I dare say.
The most damning thing you said there is that at one point Kerry went into Dublin mode. Show some respect. Show some respect.
Well, it's one thing going into Dublin mode if you can do a Dublin, say, 2018, 2019 on it, but I don't think even Dublin themselves can do that quite well at the moment, and I don't think it suits this Kerry team personally, given how good they were when they went direct last year and how bloody good their inside forwards are. You know, play to your strengths a little bit. I don't think it necessarily suits them.
Richie, Dublin mode 2022, I mean, this makes things very interesting now, not least with Tralee on the horizon.
Yeah, it's all over. They might as well pack up and not compete in the rest of the league. Yeah, it was a very strange watch on Saturday. I said it when I was on with the Ireland AM lads there on Sunday that like Kieran McGeeney's not going to be thinking Armagh are going to win an All Ireland out of this no more than Desi Farrell is going to be thinking that it's a disaster. But there's more and more questions to be asked now about Dublin. There is a sense that the aura that they've built up over the last decade or more is evaporating almost in a way that we saw with Manchester United at Old Trafford since Ferguson departed. There is that air that this conveyor belt that we all thought that was going to come through with Dublin players keep regenerating like some magnificent football manager, championship manager team online just hasn't happened and won't happen because it's not human for stuff like that to keep going, it turns out. And we're just kind of left wondering now what the championship is going to look like if Dublin aren't actually genuine All-Ireland contenders. They're going to be contenders, you got to imagine, later on in the season, and there will be players coming back and they will improve as the year goes on. But that drift back towards the pack is very, very real. It's not just a suggested one anymore. There's no sense that this is a COVID related thing and we'll have to wait until a real championship comes back around or a real league comes back around. There now very much is the reality that they're coming back to the pack, which in some corners of the Dublin support will actually be revelled in, because they were sick of the likes of us saying that they were overfunded and that they were going to win All Irelands for the next decades to come. But it now looks like it's going to be fairly interesting. But it does have to have the very heavy caveat that it was a game in January and pretty early in proceedings as well, and that not everybody is back, and there's a certain player like Conor Callaghan still to come back into that side. So there's so many caveats you can add to it. But things are interesting more than they have been in a Dublin sense, and probably not in a good way for them than they have been in a decade.
Yes, I think it's exactly. They're still very much All-Ireland contenders, but things have slipped. It's softened my cough. I have to say, one of the reasons I wanted to watch the match in particular, and then one of the reasons it really caught my eye, is that I was very much one of those in full anticipation of a Dublin statement post-Mayo. I thought there's motivation there once again. There's a lot of hurt there. They've had a long off-season to discuss and tease out the slippages that we saw last season and to rectify them very quickly. Instead, arguably, we saw more unforced errors than last year. We saw more ill discipline. We saw stranger shot selection. And even right out the gate, Sean Bugler had 2 wides in the first 7 minutes. And Howard, even though he scored, it was from way out. And so that did not suggest the team shooting from distance because they'd run out of ideas. You know, right out the gate, they were shooting from distances we don't usually see. They were, for so long on, just methodical in going through patterns of possession and working chances around the D and high percentage, high conversion chances. And so we're not used to seeing Dublin 13 wides with lots of Hail Marys thrown in and lots of turnovers as well. I mean, a couple of, emphatic moments. Like I jotted down during the game, for instance, there was Kieran Kilkenny, swallowed up at halfway at one point in a 2v1, and then there was a moment where Fenton was swallowed up in the edge of the D and he had to kick it backwards, and then John Small went in and he was surrounded and he dropped the ball and he was fouled. That was on 33 minutes. Lots of these very emphatic turnovers, and then in defence they looked at C for the goals. So you throw all that into the pot, and so many aspects there, big and small, were not tolerated under Jim Gavin, and we saw them beginning to bubble up a touch last year. And again, I echo Richie's caveat of first game in January, but they were all there again You know, whatever work was done in the off-season, whatever talk was had in the off-season, they were all there again. That's why it's so fascinating.
And I kind of expected the emphatic response as well, not least from the players outside of the spotlight over the last couple of years. An opportunity for some of those players to say, listen, this is our team now. We're not only competing to get on the match day 26, we're talking about getting starting jerseys now. This is our opportunity to actually show the Hill back at it again for the first time in a long time, that we're going to take this jersey and we're going to make this team All-Ireland champions once again this year. And that will be the really disappointing thing, is that the next men up just have shown so far that they aren't as good as some of the other substitutes they had in the past. That's a really obvious point to make, but I'm sure there was hope that, as Richie said, there was this conveyor belt that was gilded and that it was never going to let them down. But it turns out that actually the greatest generation of footballers of all time are actually pretty good, and there will naturally be a drop-off. I think there are two factors that Dublin can maybe get a little bit of heart from. First of all, the Rolls-Royce players that you mentioned there were so poor at times on Saturday. They will not be that poor for the duration of the season. And second of all, I genuinely think they looked a little bit leggy. I would not have been surprised if they were down at the Curragh doing some sort of army boot camp during the week to sort of sort out I don't know, the hard people in the squad from the rest, because they did look as if they had come off a pretty hard training session, to be honest with you. Not too dissimilar to how Tyrone looked in Killarney last year. So those are moments that can give them hope. But I think it's inarguable at this point that they've come back to the pack a little bit. And most worryingly, it's the exact same failings in that second half against Mayo that showed up again on Saturday night. And if this form doesn't come back, like, we will rewind to that half-time against Mayo last year and say, well, what a pivotal moment that was, because ever since then they haven't really shown anything resembling their previous composure, their previous game plan. And on when they were chasing the game in the final quarter on Saturday, they did resort to Hail Marys, which was a very un-Dublin thing. Again, the caveat for that, I guess, Joe, is that they haven't been chasing too many games in the past. So I guess when they got their noses in front in all the big games over the last few years, they had a way of staying in front. Whereas when they were chasing a game, well, we didn't actually get to find out that much about Dublin.
Yeah, so we'll start the news round. Billy Joe's going to join us this hour. Billy Joe Padden around 7:30. The news round is brought to you by Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors. And Richie, there is news. Greater Manchester Police have certainly released a statement on Mason Greenwood.
Yeah, they have been granted extra time to question Mason Greenwood today. The Manchester United forward was arrested yesterday after allegations of rape and domestic abuse were shared online. Greenwood's sponsors, Nike, have suspended their relationship with the player, saying they're deeply disturbed by the allegations. Police have also warned against online commentary on the case. Yeah,
we're incredibly restricted right across the media landscape on what can be said at this stage of a potential criminal proceeding, and it's very notable the police came out as well and made a plea as part of that statement, which you alluded to, Richie. We remind people to avoid any commentary or sharing of images that could compromise the victim's right to lifelong anonymity or risk prejudicing a live investigation with active proceedings, and they were making that plea loud and clear as part of their statement. Manchester United released two statements yesterday. The first in the morning, where they said they were aware of images and allegations and they wouldn't be making any further comment until facts have been established. And then subsequent to that in the afternoon, they released a second statement where they said Greenwood would not be returning to training or to playing matches until further notice. So that is where we are as of Monday evening on this story. Greater Manchester Police have been granted extra time to question Mason Greenwood. Now, Everton then, Richie, they've got their man, and it's Frank Lampard.
It is. He was finally unveiled as Everton's new manager today, signing a 2.5-year contract to replace Rafa Benitez at Goodison Park. Former Chelsea assistant Paul Clement will be on his coaching staff. Duncan Ferguson and ex-Republic of Ireland goalkeeper Alan Kelly will remain on his backroom team. And Lampard told Everton's YouTube channel today that he's aware of the challenges that are facing the Toffees and now him this season.
Well, this is the position we're in, and I've watched closely from the outside, and now I'm in. I think the first thing as a football club when you're having tough times, and this happens, is that you regain the confidence and you get together. And we keep talking here about players and fans. That's a group thing. In terms of what we can control as players, we have to work hard. We have to be focused, but we have to have confidence. It's a good squad. It's a good bunch of players. It's a good team. And I think when things are hard and sometimes things are tough, there's a lot of criticism that can be thrown around. I'm here to change that and try and make it a positive message for the players, believe in themselves, and show that we have more than enough talent to move up the table. But it's easy to speak like that. We actually have to do, obviously.
This club are doomed. Eoin, we're 2 years, 2 years into a pandemic, and this is the microphone quality that they're coming at me with. It's unacceptable. Yeah. That is unacceptable. He's underwater.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point. Only a proper radio man would spot that. I just thought it was a reflection on your opinion on Frank Lampard there, which I dare say is maybe not too dissimilar from that anyway. But I don't know. Like, I mean, it's interesting getting their manager on transfer deadline day and wondering how much of an impact he actually has on some of the new recruits. I think Donny van de Beek has already mentioned in his Everton interview. Haven't heard the phone quality on that one, or the audio quality. He's already mentioned the excitement of working with the new coach and playing against him in the Champions League and all that. And I know they're in a tug of war at the moment with Newcastle over Dele Alli. But if you bring in Donny van de Beek, Dele Alli and Frank Lampard into the club in the same week, but it's not going to be dull over the next little while. There are three men who have a point to prove, both as a manager and as players. So there's hope there with all three aspects of that, but there's also plenty of reason to doubt their potential this season as well.
Yeah, Rich, I know it's your next door. You might give us the details on Everton's new signings.
Yeah, Lampard wasting little time getting his feet under the table at Goodison. Dele Alli underwent a medical this evening ahead of a €12 million move from Tottenham. That 12 million will only be paid, by the way, if he plays 20 games for the Toffees. And as Eoin alluded to there, Donny van de Beek has signed a loan deal from Manchester United. He's just been unveiled online in the past half hour or so.
What an insult to Dele Alli. This actually shows where his stock is. That it's a £10 million deal, which again is not that much when you consider the heights he was climbing relatively recently. But also, it's contingent on 20 appearances. Not 200, not 100, not 30, 20 measly appearances. Is not guaranteed here. It's a strange clause in the contract. I don't remember seeing anything like that before or hearing anything of that before. So where Dele Alli goes is going to be fascinating. And how Donny van de Beek does is going to be fascinating. And as for Lampard, do you know, I thought in time-honoured tradition, Chelsea had shown a lack of patience to Lampard. I thought he was doing okay. It looked, I hasten to add, like a squad which was out of sync and out of balance and just not quite fitting together, and work needed to be done, and the younger players are coming through, and just all needed a lot of time to kind of bed in a little bit. And then, of course, Tuchel arrives and sorts it out in a week. And that, in turn, casts a shadow over the job Lampard was doing. So this is the litmus test, I would say to you, Rich. This is where we, in 6 months' time, we'll have a really good feel for how Lampard's doing.
But he needs longer than 6 months because Everton are in so much of a state at the minute.
But what if Thomas Tuchel replaces him at Everton and sorts it out in
I'd say even the magical Thomas Tuchel might have a hard time untangling the knots that have been tied by the board and successive managers at Everton. Yeah. There's no direction there, and it's been borne out by their signings over the last while. And you could even say the signings of Dele Alli and Donny van de Beek continue that trend tonight, because Van de Beek, as Eoin said there, there's three men with a point to prove. The law of averages suggests that not all three of them are actually going to prove that point at Everton over the next 6 months. So there's going to be at least one failure among that three. Lampard will hope to God it's not him. Van de Beek can't have it be him because his stock will fall so rapidly. And by the way things are going, Dele Alli will be back at MK Dons within 18 months because he's been so poor over the last while. But if that clause doesn't light a fire under him, then nothing will.
I know.
If the fact that we're betting the fact that we will pay £10 million for you if you can just get over the line in 20 games, then he has to actually buck up his ideas and get it together, because that won't be any more of an impetus for him to do it. But the Everton squad are full of those players. They're absolutely full of players that they've signed that might be on their last. The reason they bought Dele Alli for such a paltry fee, by the way, is because the Van de Beek signing brings them up to their limit of loan signings, because they allowed Rafa Benitez bring Anwar El Ghazi in from Aston Villa on a loan deal, and they suddenly find that they don't need him. So you've got all of these players who are completely superfluous to their needs at Everton. They're trying to find a best 11 that they can possibly field out of a lot of them, and they've sold some of their best players over the last while, like Luca Digne, because of a fallout with their manager, who they've since sacked. So you try and make any kind of logic out of Everton and he'd be doing well over the next while. I wish Frank the best of luck. He does come across as a very likeable character. I think given more time at Chelsea, things probably could have worked out.
I didn't think you would like Lampard as a character.
As a manager, I thought he did a decent enough job at Derby, albeit with a bunch of fairly high profile loan signings from Chelsea. I thought at Chelsea, like you say, he did okay, but okay is never going to cut it at that club. I think okay will cut it at Everton, but he just needs time to actually untangle those messes, because in terms of recruitment for the last decade, they have been a shambles.
Dele Alli to be sitting on 19 appearances in 3 years' time. You heard it here first. Text in, Brian, where has this conveyor belt of Dublin talent gone? No talk now of splitting the Dubs into two. Frank makes the not unreasonable point, forget Dublin, just how good were Armagh. Yes, they were very good and pitched up in great shape, and Eoin O'Neill exceptional, and Jarlath Ogue exceptional as well. I'm sure you're going to get a sense of his marauding up the left-hand side on being at the stadium. Really came across on TV. Somebody else, worrying times for us True Blues. I reckon we'll probably only win 3 of the next 5 All-Irelands. Is a text in. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. Because so Kerry are still not the finished product. I don't think Tyrone have anybody quaking, Mayo or Mayo. So, I don't know, what are we saying here about Dublin Own? If you had to put your neck on the line, if there was a gun to your head as to who would win the All-Ireland based on the evidence of weekend 1 in January, giving serious thought to the Dubs still, or no? You're writing them off totally.
No, because if you look around the rest of the division, obviously, as you say, Kerry the following day, Tyrone haven't ever gone back to back. That's a really big issue with them. I mean, do you need any explanation on Mayo or Donegal and what they've shown over the last couple of years? And Monaghan have proved, along with Armagh, that they haven't been able to take that next leap. Armagh are the one team in that Division 1 who you can say they are travelling in an upward trajectory and will keep going that way for some time. They are well placed to become the next Monaghan, as in to get within get within reach of an All-Ireland semi-final and potentially win one. That is how high their ceiling is. But it's also because the ceiling has lowered a little bit because Dublin aren't what they were, and it makes for a really exciting year. And on top of that, you've got Armagh playing the sort of football that they are. That's winning games. That you're going to throw that into the mix for a championship where we don't know the outcome of. So it could be great football, it could be great drama, and they're the only 2 things you can ask for looking ahead for a championship.
And did it feel in the stadium like Armagh were wonderfully direct in comparison with Dublin? Yeah,
it did. And even at times, to be honest, early in the first quarter, I kind of felt that Armagh could have been more direct. Now, I mean, if you compare the statistics of who played the more balls into the opposition 21-yard line, I'm sure Armagh completely killed Dublin on that statistic. But there was even a sense at the start from Armagh, it was like, are we actually able to do this? And like when Eoin O'Neill gets in for that first one, where I think it's Davy Byrne who misses the ball, like I think it's after that moment that they're like, all right, this is working. But just on that point, it's really interesting because it felt like Croke Park as a pitch did not benefit Dublin whatsoever on Saturday night. That direct ball, the open spaces really went in Armagh's favour. I actually wouldn't be surprised if Dublin would be better suited to playing in Tralee now this Saturday night as opposed to at the open spaces of Croker.
Interesting. I thought you were going to say move their games to Parnell Park for a moment. So, Rich, I'll let you blitz through a few of these stories here because there's a bit going on.
Yeah, deadline day, as we all know, and Tottenham arguably the busiest of the Premier League clubs today. They have signed Rodrigo Bentancur and Dejan Kulusevski from Juventus. Bentancur has cost Spurs an initial €19 million, while Kulusevski's a loan agreement until the end of next season that will cost Tottenham €10 million. Heading out the exit door, aside from Dele Alli today, are Tanguy Ndombele, who's rejoined Lyon on loan. Brian Heel has rejoined Valencia, that's on loan until the end of this season, and Giovanni Lo Celso is a loan deal for Villarreal. Arguably the story of deadline day has occurred in West London, just over 7 months since his cardiac arrest playing for Denmark at Euro 2020. Christian Eriksen is back in football. He has signed a short-term deal with Brentford. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang had looked set for a loan move from Arsenal to Barcelona. However, Arsenal are unwilling to pay any of the striker's wages should he sign for Barca. But Barcelona president Joan Laporta claims the potential deal is complicated tonight, but not dead. Aubameyang, it seems, is on his way to Spain again for a medical. Despite interest in Newcastle and West Ham, Manchester United have blocked Jesse Lingard from leaving the club. The winger is out of contract in the summer. Newcastle were believed to be willing to pay a loan fee, a survival bonus, and all of his wages, but United have still said no. Rangnick was happy for him to leave. The United board not so much. Aaron Ramsey is set to join Rangers on loan from Juventus with a view to making that deal permanent. Nat Phillips has joined Championship promotion hopefuls Bournemouth on loan from Liverpool, while Manchester City have confirmed the signing of Julian Alvarez from River Plate, but he'll remain with the Buenos Aires Giants until July. Burnley, meanwhile, they've replaced Chris Wood with the €14 million signing of 6'6" Wout Weghorst from Wolfsburg, and former Dundalk winger Dylan Connolly has moved up a division in England by joining League One side Morecambe from Northampton. Here at home, Bohemians have signed Jordan Flores, also from Northampton Town, the former Dundalk midfielder, of course, a Pushcat Award nominee for a volley scored against Shamrock Rovers in March of 2020.
Miguel Delaney is going to join us on the football show just to round everything up. I do fully suspect that this Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang situation has Peter Anamwingi vibes. I think there's going to be amazing footage later on of him knocking around the Barcelona training ground car park. I don't know quite what's going on there. I think they have to sell a player or two to get him in the door. I think there's been some talk he's claiming he's just on a personal holiday over there at the moment. So watch that space. And the Christian Eriksen one is very interesting. So post his cardiac arrest, he was fitted with an implanted cardioverter defibrillator, an ICD as it's also known. And you're not allowed to play in Serie A with an ICD fitted. You are allowed to play in the Premier League, hence his decision to come back to England. So that's a really interesting story, which we might touch on the football show as well. Andy Farrell has that strangest of things, Rich. Clean bill of health.
Yeah, to some degree at least. Anyway, Tyke Furlong, James Ryan and Ian Henderson will return to full training tomorrow, Tuesday, of course, usually the most important day from a selection point of view. They will follow the lead of Keith Earls, Joey Carberry and Josh van der Flyer, who have shaken off their respective injuries to take a full part in training this week.
Oh, and you had Ron O'Gara on this morning. Anything he said there catch your ear, catch your eye?
Well, I guess given his perspective on France at the moment, he's kind of reflecting on the huge excitement that they have for this year, for the next 18 months. I guess that this is, if we're thinking that we go into fever pitch around the World Cup and getting obsessed with the World Cup 18 months out, well, France at the moment on a complete other level. He kind of touched on the fact that there's no worries about the likes of Antoine Dupont being handed the captaincy. I know Eddie Jones tried to twist the knife a little bit on that last week, but this is a guy who's well able to handle it, and maybe we perhaps don't even realise or completely appreciate just how good this guy is. But at the same time, he was listening to Orem say, I think, and there is concern about the fact that they haven't won a championship in 11 years. So it's a very curious thing where there is this consensus around the favourites, and there's also a fact that the favourites haven't done the business in 11 years. So it should be a good championship. It's a kind of feeling a similar level of excitement around this year's championship as I am about the Gaelic Football Championship, to be honest, in terms of not being sure about who's going to win it.
Yeah, it's wide open. Even park yourself in front of the couch next Saturday for Ireland-Wales, followed by England against Scotland, which should be a cracker, not least given the two out halves, followed by Kerry-Dublin. That's your Saturday sorted out. Just a quick mention, Rich, because time is against us. Rory McIlroy broke some hearts yesterday.
He did indeed. I'm guessing yours, Joe, more than anybody else.
Yes, I was aghast, frankly. Yeah. I was open-mouthed, Richie.
He threw away a golden chance for victory at the Dubai Desert Classic, needing only to play the last two holes and 1 under par. McIlroy parred the 17th and imploded on the last, carrying a double bogey, which meant he finished third. The winning cheque of €1.2 million was collected by Victor Hovland, who beat Richard Bland at the first playoff hole after both finished the weekend on 12 under par.
Oh, did you catch any of this? Were you watching this?
I did, yeah. The pub in Newbridge had this on the big screen and just groans everywhere as soon as it hit the water. Because we were saying to one another, this is going to happen. Like he's going to hit the water here, and It was just because of the interminable wait. It was just because there was no commentary on. We just glance over every few minutes, and Rory was still standing over this one shot, and I wasn't quite sure what he had out. It was obviously a 3-wood after I read back on it afterwards, and I don't know, Joe. Was it just the wrong club? Because he didn't. It's not even one of those where it hits the green and rolls off. He was miles away.
No, he just mishit it. It was the right club. He was 267 yards. He just shouldn't have. He shouldn't have gone for it in 2. Well, what was strange was he hit 3-wood off the tee. Presumably knowing he was going to go for it in 2, and so Victor Hovland in the playoff, for instance, went for it in 2, but he had 230 yards in. McIlroy left himself 267, which is not nothing, and I suppose it's what makes him box office, but there was just no need to do it, because if he got on in 3, it's a guaranteed birdie putt to win the tournament, and if he misses the birdie putt, he's in the playoff. So course strategy or situation management is occasionally thrown at McIlroy. I think that was an instance of it. It's questionable, to say the least.
You mentioned him being box office there. It was interesting because we were chatting to Nathan on OTB AM last week, and he was saying that we don't get the John Van de Velde moments anymore in golf. People are too good. There's one man who's still giving you those moments, so you can't really deny that he's not making things exciting, but that's a very glass half full way of looking at it yesterday. Yeah,
it is. I suspect as well Victor Hovland, there's a terrible pun, I hadn't even meant it.
Oh no.
Hovering in the
oh Jesus.
I couldn't think of another word. It's all I had. Victor Hovland hovering in the playoff, I suspect, was on his mind when he was making his decision to go for it. I don't think he fancied Hovland in a playoff as well. So it wasn't good. It wasn't good. So we'll chat about that in Golf Week, I'm sure, this week, amongst other things. Eoin, Sheahan, thanks very much.
Cheers, Joe.
Richie, I'll chat to you tomorrow. Cheers.
Good stuff, nice one.